Public speaking area. That's the public speaking area you're sitting in at the moment, but not yet. If you could sit in the public area, and then you'll be called up when it comes to it. Right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Planning Committee meeting of East Cambs District Council. Members of the public, it's very nice to see you here. There are some agendas on the seats, but I don't believe there's quite enough to go around. So if you'd like to share, if you can, that would be helpful. Okay, so we move on to item number 1, which is it's before 1, a fire safety warning. Caroline.
Thank you, Chairman. We're not expecting a fire alarm, so if it does sound, please leave by the nearest available exit, which is where you came in and down those stairs, or a fire exit just in the back corner here. Please don't use the lift. We can assist you if you can't do the stairs, and meet at the barrier in the front car park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have we got any apologies and substitutions, please?
We have apologies from Councillor Sue Austin, Councillor Matthew Downey and Councillor Lisa Stubbs. And we have Councillor Julia Huffer here as a substitute for Councillor Stubbs.
And then we move on to item number 2, which is declarations of interest. Have we any declarations of interest?
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Huffer declaring a predetermined interest in agenda item number 6. If I could speak to the item and then leave the room, Chair.
My feeling is that you should speak. This is to item number 6. You should speak as a local member. You go to the speaking desk to do that, and then once you've done that, will you leave the room and take no part in the proceedings?
I will do so.
Councillor Every.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the ward member for the first item, agenda item 5, and so I will be speaking to that, but won't take any part in the discussion of the vote.
So we're going to do exactly the same as I discussed with Councillor Huffer. That's absolutely fine. We now move on to the minutes, and I presume maybe all members have read them. And is there any reason why I should not later sign them as being a correct record? No, that appears okay. And we now move on to item number 4, which is the chairman's announcements. It's a very simple one. I'd just like to wish everybody here this afternoon a very happy new year and a prosperous 2023. The years that have gone have been a little bit troublesome, and I think I can't see next year being totally trouble-free either. But nevertheless, if we approach all our work as I believe we've done this year, then we will make as much a success of it as is possible. And I would like to not only wish members of the public, members of staff and council members a happy Christmas, but thank you all very much for your cooperation and hard work during the year that's about to close. Thank you. We now move on to item number 5, and we have the officer's presentation.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. So agenda item number 5 relates to the rear of 3036 Market Street in Ely for the demolition of the existing outbuildings, change of use of existing cold store and the erection of 4 flats with associated works. 2 brief updates to members prior to the main presentation, which would have been circulated to you. The first being that at page 24 of my report, section 7.91, I recommend that a pre-commencement contamination condition would need to be imposed following further discussion with the scientific officer on the basis of a provision of a contamination report. This is no longer considered to be necessary, so it'd be just a standard unexpected contamination condition. That is not considered to have any bearing on the recommendations elsewhere within the report. The second update relates to the revised Sun study circulated to members yesterday, Monday evening, which was provided by the applicant. This has not been consulted upon, which is to note, given that matters of overshadowing were raised by members of the public. On the basis of the revised Sun study, I am content in my professional recommendation that reason for refusal 2 within my report can be removed. However, members should consider, when considering the application, that this information hasn't been publicly consulted upon. So moving on to the application, the slide shows application site in context, as well as the aerial view. Images here show views into the application site from Newnham Street with the actual vehicular access on the right-hand side. There's an existing access serving the wider Woolpack Yard development and currently serving the application site. These are further views. On the left is a further distance view of the site, and then on the right is a view of the existing outbuilding in the application site that will be demolished as part of the proposals, with the Woolpack Yard development in the background. The images on the screen show the Woolpack Yard development. This is where part of the flat block in front of is going to be proposed. Again, this is a wider context view, and on the right-hand side, there are the existing blue gates, which actually serve the Woolpack Yard development and provide pedestrian access to the flats and for the wider amenity space. Again, just another further image. The image here shows number 40 Market Street, which adjoins the application site. Again, this is adjacent to where some of the development is proposed. And this shows the backs of 30 to 36 Market Street, also part of the application proposals, where one of the flats is to be created. On the slide is the proposed development and the floor plans. The block plan is shown on the left. And some site sections for you, showing the front and the rear elevations. The elevation on the screen shows what will be visible from the Woolpack Yard development, and then from the Market Street flats and properties. These are some illustrative CGIs provided by the applicant, which shows the development in the context as proposed. It's further CGIs. Moving on to the main planning considerations, these are listed on the screen. With regards to the principle of development, the application site is within the development envelope for Ely, where the principle of residential development is considered to be acceptable. Backland development is also considered to be acceptable in this location, given the contextual analysis of the application site. There is no conflict with policy COM2 regarding loss of retail floor space. The conversion of existing small store associated with the Market Street properties is considered to be negligible, and therefore there'd be no detrimental loss of retail floor space. Any contributions would be in line with policy growth 3 as well, particularly regarding SIL. However, it is important to note that for the following discussions, proposals, whilst compliant in the locational perspective, are not considered to be generally aligning with the objectives of policy growth 5, which is securing healthy living conditions for all occupiers. With regards to the residential amenity for the proposed flats themselves and Market Street properties, this is considered to be acceptable. It is noted, and as outlined in the committee report, that one of the flats does fall below the nationally described space standards. Notwithstanding, it is noted this isn't an adopted policy by East Cambridgeshire District Council. It is a material consideration, but it has not formed a reason for refusal in this instance. Generally, however, the proposed development is considered to provide an acceptable level of residential amenity for existing and prospective occupiers of both the proposed flats as well as surrounding properties along Market Street. This then moves on to the Woolpack Yard development. Reason for refusal 1, as listed in the committee report, raises significant concerns regarding the scale and proximity of the proposed development to the Woolpack Yard properties. This is also illustrated on the slide for some more context. It is considered that the proposed development, if introduced, would be oppressive and overbearing upon not only the internal space, the occupiers of the flats, but also their enjoyment of the outdoor amenity space associated with the flats. this would be entirely contrary to policy ENV2 of the local plan, as well as the national planning policy framework. With regards to character, appearance and heritage, the proposal itself is considered to actually provide a net enhancement to the conservation area. And there is no objection from the County Council regarding archaeological heritage assets subject to appropriately worded conditions. Highways, parking and access. The proposed development itself will be proposed as car-free. There are 4 spaces retained for the existing and retained retail premises along Market Street. So that'd be 2 spaces provided per retail unit. The site itself is currently used for parking of vehicles and is considered that in terms of general uplift in vehicle movements associated with development, this would actually be rather minimal. With regards to waste collection, this is also going to be very similar to the existing arrangements for the existing flats above the Market Street properties. Regarding other material matters, the proposed scheme is considered to be acceptable in terms of those listed on the screen, subject to appropriately worded conditions. In summary, however, the proposed development is considered to result in significantly detrimental residential media effects upon the Woolpack Yard development. This is predominantly by virtue of the scale and proximity of the development to the Woolpack Yard development and the associated outdoor amenity space. It's going to be an overbearing and oppressive form of development. This would be entirely contrary to the policies contained within the East Cambridgeshire local plan, as well as the national planning policy framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a speaker registered, Anne Fenn. You've got 5 minutes to speak. You'll have an amber light come on at 4 minutes. And before you start speaking, would you be kind enough to turn the microphone on, please? And bring the microphone to your face if you could. Thank you. In your own time.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the residents of Woolpack Yard. I see that there are many of our points addressed, whether they are aligned with policies or not. I would just like to say that the overall effect of having a land development or building development so close to Woolpack Yard would be detrimental to the health of some of the residents, as they are housebound through terminal illness and mental health issues. The noise and disruption would be bad for their health. Now, we understand the need for new buildings and sympathetic building and affordable homes. We understand this. We just feel that if it could be sympathetically designed, say not 4 flats, but 2, or 4 lower flats, lower height, it would benefit the people, the residents who already live there, who've lived there for 20, 30 years, and would perhaps not lead a proposed developer to go through this process. We do need access for fire and ambulance and carers constantly through Woolpack Yard, sometimes at no notice. We struggle already for carers and families to visit their elderly parents. So we are struggling already with 8 spaces, 4 of which will be taken away by the development because there'll be no room to move into the 4 spaces. And along with the noise that these electronic gates will generate. Again, it's not a healthy environment for anybody to live in. My concerns are some of the staff who work locally will have nowhere to park, so they'll just move jobs. Or businesses may go out of business because they can't get staff, excuse me. They can't get staff who have nowhere to park. And people do need their cars these days, especially in a rural town like Ely, where a lot of people travel in from Cambridge and the outside villages. One of my biggest worries is how these, if the proposal goes ahead, how are these building supplies lorries going to negotiate that sharp 45-degree turn into Woolpack Yard without blocking off part of Newman Street traffic, which is one of the main roads into the city centre? They're going to have to pull in, reverse, pull in, turn, reverse. So it's going to be very difficult for them to negotiate. And also, would it block off any fire and ambulance service that needs to come in at that very moment? I think that's all I have to say, because some of your bullet points on there do address some of the points. And I thank you for allowing me time to speak.
Thank you very much indeed. If you'd just like to sit where you are for a minute. Members, have you any questions? Councillor Trapp, first of all, and Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much. I'm slightly confused. Maybe it's I ought to be asking this of the planning officer about the car parking. You say, are Woolpack Yard using some of the car parking in the current estate or not? Or I'm not sure how you're going to be affected by car parking.
The car parking is going to be affected by the electronic gate because it doesn't allow anybody to manoeuvre into those 4 spaces which will be facing opposite.
I think we'll have to ask that of the planning office as well later, when it's your turn. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I had just a couple of little points to clarify, if I may. One of them, you talked about the gates. You talked about noise generally, and obviously you've sort of later specified the gates. Is that your main source, or about construction noise? Because you said it potentially adverse affected mental health.
Firstly, the construction noise, and secondly, the gates.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing I was going to ask you, we're a little unaware about exactly a Woolpack Yard and its sort of status. And you talked about the residents, and you talked about staff, and it sounded as though you were talking about staff for the shops. I didn't know if there's any staffing that goes along with Woolpack Yard. Do the residents have any help, in-house help, if that makes sense?
Yes, we do have window cleaners, cleaners that clean the building, and we have a scheme manager who comes twice a week.
And no nursing hope or anything like that? No nursing help?
Yes, a lot of the residents have carers 3 times a day.
And this just goes back to the parking issue. Do they park on sites generally currently at the moment?
Yes.
Any other members' questions? I just, first of all, I'd like to thank you, but secondly, I'd like to just advise you that some of your speech was basically saying that you would like to see the application smaller. We as a committee, we have a choice. We have to either accept or reject the application that's in front of us. So we don't have the ability to say, well, if it was bigger here, or the doors were green or anything like that. That's what the application is, and we have to either accept it or reject it. Thank you very much for your speech.
Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline Evans will read a statement from the residents of 32 Market Street.
Thank you, Chairman. This is from Bruce Colmer and Claire Rose Charlton. To confirm, we are still and will continue to be strongly opposed to this application. There are many reasons for this, not least the inconvenience of the works themselves, restriction of access during the works, noise of construction during the day. I'm a shift worker and sleep during days. The hazards of essentially living on an active building site for months on end. The current application appears to remove all of our right of access via any motor vehicle. It also takes away our designated parking space. It is already difficult at times to gain access to the flat as the road by NatWest is blocked by cars and Woolpack Yard frequently has cars double parked, leaving a very small gap for cars to drive down. And this is also a two-way street, which leaves opportunity for accidents, especially with elderly residents around. I cannot imagine this will be improved by current plans. I would like to point out that those in favour of the original planning application come from those who do not live in the area, one as far away as Huntingdon, and will not be directly affected by the works in any way. Is all this trouble really worth it for only 4 additional studio flats?
Thank you very much. We've now got Ruth Gunton. I think you know the rules, Ruth.
Thank you, Chair. Committee members, the application in front of you is something which brings forward much needed accommodation in the rental sector on a brownfield site in central Ely. The background and driver for this application is simple. According to Rightmove, rental demand is up 6% compared to last year, and available properties are down 26%. That is the national picture. However, colleagues in Cheffin's Ely office tell me that that is the same situation for Ely as well, and I'm sure you're aware of this from your constituents. We also know that the country has taken in a large number of Ukrainian refugees, many of whom are now looking to move on from their original hosts. The applicant themselves have been contacted by ECDC looking for appropriate accommodation, and there's just not enough rental stock. The applicant is a successful property company based in Ely, renting out and managing residential and commercial property for the last 24 years. They're very experienced in the residential retail market, dealing with over 100 tenancies a year, though this is the first time they've had to literally build their own housing stock. ITIS Associates owns not only the application site to the rear of 30 to 36 Market Street, but the whole of the property, which includes the 2 business units at the front and the existing flats on the first floor. The applicant is looking to make better use of the brownfield area at the rear that seems frankly wasted at the moment. They want to invest in a long-term endeavour, and this can be achieved because they do own that wider site, rather than a more complex situation if somebody else were to try and develop that. So the demand for more rental accommodation is not really in question, and the applicant is willing to invest and build 4 flats on the site. The officer report states that in the officer's opinion, the application meets policy in other regards other than neighbouring amenity. It's therefore on this point that members will need to think carefully about the planning balance today, what they've seen on site, what they'll hear today, and what weight they give to those different aspects. In defence of the proposal, I would ask members to note that in particular, this is a city centre location where close proximity can reasonably be expected. Buildings are closer together. Indeed, the Woolpack Yard building itself is built very close to the boundary of its own site. Of course, the impacts of that proximity should not significantly affect reasonable residential amenity, And in particular, there have been concerns raised regarding overbearing from the two-storey element of the proposal. In considering this, I would ask members to take into account that the current boundary treatment between the Woolpack Yard building and the application site is a low wire mesh fence, which you'll probably have seen on site today. However, right now, the applicant could erect a 2-metre close boarded fence along that boundary under permitted development rights, which would have an impact on the Woolpack Yard flats. That needs to be taken as a baseline when thinking about any potential further impacts from the proposal, which we do not consider are enough to warrant refusal. In relation to the sun studies themselves, you will note that there are shifts in the areas of shading, not just due to the proposal, but from the demolition of the existing outbuildings on site, which already cast shadow. The result is more nuanced than the proposed flats, just adding more shade, with the whole pattern of where and when the shade is having changed. So to move on from residential amenity, I would like to make some final points. We've worked closely with Gary Johns Architects, who have designed a high quality scheme, which has been commended by the Conservation Officer and incorporates a nice communal garden. The MPPF strives for beautiful design, and we think this has the potential to be a hidden gem. There's also a safety concern with the site as it is. The applicant recently had to install some CCTV and additional lights due to some drug dealing that was taking place in the open-sided carport on site. And obviously redevelopment of that would help in being a better designed and a secure site. The application site is in central Ely, and therefore no parking spaces are proposed for the new flats, with the 4 spaces for existing businesses being retained. That means that there will be no significant change in the type and number of vehicles coming in and out of the site. In response to some things that have been said already, the council has the power to impose conditions that it feels is reasonable regarding construction times, materials and any other boundary treatments that they feel is reasonable. So to conclude, the proposal is for development of an unused.
You do have a red light.
Can I finish my
I'll
last
give you another
sentence?
10 seconds.
Literally there. The proposals for a development of a brownfield site, central Ely, by a company really wanting to invest in the local area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Christine Ambrose-Smith.
Good afternoon.
Councillor Trout.
Good afternoon. The previous lady spoke and gave quite a lot of emphasis on parking spaces. I'm a little confused. We're talking about 4 or 8 or none. Can you clarify what the current position is reparking and what the proposed? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. So you'll have seen that it's informal at the moment. So there's no marked out spaces, but there are 2 spaces for each of the businesses. So the dry cleaners and the hairdressers. They are the official spaces. Those will be retained in the proposal.
So there's no parking for the current inhabitants of the Woolpack Yard?
I believe it's informal and not necessarily part of, not sure if it's part of their lease or not, but there's no planning condition that sort of says they must have one. It's sort of part of the negotiation of the lease.
Can I have a follow-up? Attention was also drawn to the noise of a gate. Have you got any experience of similar gates? I mean, what is the level of noise?
I mean, that's something that would be part of a condition and could be agreed with the council, but I know that so on the access off Market Street at the moment, the narrow access, which is one of the existing accesses, there is already a sliding gate. The house on the left hand side as you come up, but that's something that could be conditioned if necessary, or speaking to the applicant just now, we could amend the boundary treatment.
Councillor Trapp.
Thank you very much. I have two questions. These electronic gates, I mean, there are no gates at the moment, so I'm not sure why we're putting in gates, particularly since you say when it's developed and the residents are there, there'll be more control over the entry. So I'm just slightly concerned about why you think you need electronic gates.
It's simply just a delineation of the site and just to provide a bit more security for the people that might live on there in the future. Does that
Okay,
help?
but it seems from what the residents of whatever it is, what's right? Woolpack, sorry. Woolpack Yard said is that they sometimes actually is quite useful to not park in there, but to turn in there. Is that, I think that's what's happened. So that's one thing I was. The other one is I'm looking at these plans, the ones of proposed front elevation. I'm just really concerned why why flat 1 isn't to the north and flats 2 and 3, why they're not interchanged? Because part of the thing is that they're going to be really, I'm not that we're having to judge what's before us and not, but I'm just saying we've got this big blank wall fronting Woolpack Yard residents who are in a flat, and therefore it will be actually hiding all their sun, winter, and I suspect all except high summer.
So that's really a trade-off between privacy. So if we had a window there, if that's what you're suggesting.
No, I'm
There would
not
be-
saying
oh,
you have a I'm
oh.
saying what I'm saying is that why those two, the flat 1 is not interchanged with flats 3 and 4, because flat 1 is much lower, the one on the left, and therefore it would be less intrusive on the Woolpack Yard residents, whereas you
Oh,
have
I
the
see.
double-story building right on against adjacent.
Yeah, it's to do with I think it's number 40 next door that has the windows. So it will be impacting on the neighbouring flats at first floor level.
So you're impacting on Woolpack Yard rather than neighbours.
Well, it's always a balance with planning, and that's one of the things that you'll have to decide this afternoon if that is too much or not. But we've tried to design with Gary Johns a site, something that is maximizing what could be delivered on this site within the constraints of it. So
Okay, thank you very
does that
much.
help? Okay.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Ruth. I'd like to turn to flat 4. And I'd like to know if any efforts have been made to make it what to me would be a more acceptable size. You say your clients are very experienced in the rental market, but that looks tiny to me.
So yeah, I spoke to my colleagues at Cheffins in the residential lettings team to try and understand whether that would be undesirable to live in or to let, and unlettable in its size. They told me that it's not, and they quoted that they have recently let a site. It's in Cambridge on Mill Road, so it's slightly different context, but it is still central, I guess, of a 22 square meter. So this is flat 4 is 29 square meters. So that one was 24, and they said really it's about the spec of it. So if it's a good quality interior, there's nothing to say it's unlettable.
But yeah, the answer is no. You haven't done anything about working on a bigger flat there.
No.
Okay, at the moment, you've got people who, say, for example, working in the hairdressing shop, who are tenants, I presume, and they come in by car. And how do they access their car parking space at the moment today?
So there's 2 accesses, vehicle accesses in there. So there's one via Woolpack Yard, and there is the narrow vehicle access off Market Street. So either of those are open to be used.
So they're going to come up by the mortgage advisors and then turn left and go in at the moment.
They could use either of the vehicle accesses, Market
Have
Street
you,
or
do
Newman
you
Street.
know whether, my concern is that you've got people accessing that yard at the moment who if it was me, I'd be coming by the finance, you know, the people I'm talking about, and they wouldn't be going through Woolpack Yard. Does anybody at the moment access parking for, say, the barber shop by going through Woolpack Yard?
I don't know. I don't know exactly which route they take, I'm afraid. I
If
can only
this
say
went
that both.
ahead, if this went ahead, they'd have to access through Woolpack Yard.
They would, yeah.
And
I would say one of the benefits actually to pedestrian safety of people along Market Street is that the current vehicle access off Market Street will be blocked up. So there is only going to be one access through Woolpack Yard, because at the moment it's so narrow. If you're coming out onto Market Street, you can't see pedestrians either side on the pavement. So it blocks off that possibility by having the wall with just the pedestrian door in it that's being proposed now. Does that make sense?
I'm just concerned that everything would go through Woolpack Yard when it's done. But
Yes.
that's answered my question, okay. I think Councillor Brown touched on it. Could you give me either the square meterage or square footage of flat number 4?
Flat 4 is 29 square meters. I think the square footage is in the opposite report, I believe.
And that's going to be about 300 square feet.
It is small. I mean, I should draw your attention to the fact that having looked at both Rightmove and Zoopla today, which are rental sites for rental, either one bed or studio apartments, there's no, I think there was 2 overall that were available. One of them was reserved for NHS workers, and one of them was a shared a house in multiple occupancy room, HMO room. There's really nothing out there at the moment. So assuming this is done in a high spec, it will be snapped up, I believe.
So the flat number 4 is 29 square meters. And am I right in thinking there's a recommended size that we deal with here?
So there's a national space standard which is not adopted in East Cambs. I think Holly will probably comment on that shortly. And that, yeah, I think I'll leave that for you to comment on if that's okay.
So we haven't adopted it at East Cambs. However, there's a national recommended standard and this is below that.
That's correct.
Okay, fine. And I'm trying to quite work out the difference between your proposed application and the wall of the nearest building in Woolpack Yard, where there's a window in Woolpack Yard looking towards the application site. And I understand that the application site will be a solid wall and won't have any windows. Am I right in thinking that the flat in Woolpack Yard, they're on individual floors? So if there's a window on the ground floor that has its window obstructed, it would be obstructing to a day room, and there's not sort of bedrooms on the first floor and living space on the ground floor.
I believe that they are just, yeah, 1 floor accommodation. So ground floor, first floor, second floor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trapp.
Just as a point of interest, my brother did live in London in a flat which was I think under 30 square meters. And yeah, but he was young, you know. I don't think that's a material consideration about the size, actually, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And we now go on to Councillor Every. You're going to go and sit over there. You're going to speak as a ward member, and then you're going to leave the room. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm very grateful that the planning process allows a ward member to call in an application, an activity which is rarely used, but provides an opportunity for additional scrutiny of a planning application by the planning committee. I would also like to thank the planning officer, Holly Chapman, who has been very helpful during the process when deciding if to call it in. The city of Ely continues to be a thriving market town despite COVID and other economic pressures, capitalising on its amazing heritage, markets and variety of high street shops and hostelries. It is a community and a place where people want to live, work and congregate. We are incredibly short of living accommodation and working spaces in the centre. The centre itself has huge opportunities to put that right if empty accommodation above premises were brought into occupation and empty infill spaces creatively developed behind existing buildings in the High Street and Market Street. I thought long and hard before calling this in, having real respect for both the applicant and the officer. I am no expert in planning and technical questions will be best answered by the applicant or planning officer, but even professionals and expert opinions vary. This application is for 4 flats. This application for 4 flats is an investment in our local area, providing stock for rental in response to the demand that there is. It infills behind an existing Market Street frontage shops and flats. The flats are already owned by the applicant in an area where we know there has been antisocial behaviour, as it provides a dark and hidden place for people to congregate, which we have had to deal with. The development has been designed by a well-respected architect and the conservation officer has no objections if certain conditions are met. There have been no objections from the statutory consultees and the City of Ely Council has no concerns, which is always an important consideration. City centre locations very often have buildings which are built closer to other buildings, as can be seen generally in the city, and there is no requirement for car parking for new flats to be provided in a city location. The applicant and officer will both put their case for proximity to the Woolpack Yard and hopefully address the concerns raised. With this in mind, I felt that with the need for this type of accommodation in the centre of Ely and the differences in opinion, it should be brought to the committee for their deliberation to determine if the benefits outweigh any issues of possible harm. I have had several discussions with the applicant and feel that it is best not to take part in the discussion or to vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions for Councillor Ebley? Councillor Jones.
I know you're obviously trying to avoid making a decision so exactly one way or another, but in light of the fact that we passed some 80 lettable properties in the last planning, do you feel that you know, it's acceptable still to put a smaller one in when perhaps there will be a not exactly a deluge of new properties coming available, but you know, should we still be putting undersized ones in when perhaps they're no longer necessary?
It's a good question, of course. I do realise the planning application that we were thinking about, but this is a city centre location. This is not an outskirts of the city location, and we know that we have opportunities within the city of empty upstairs on shops and flats, and also we have pockets of places behind the high street which could well be used to utilise the kind of accommodation that this is different from the accommodation that we were looking at out on Angel Drove. So yes, I do feel that the city centre requires more living accommodation of this style. That's per se.
Councillor Trapp.
Thank you very much. I understand the need for more accommodation in Ely and particularly small, and I think that's very good. My only concern here is the actual proximity of it to Woolpack Yard being so high. I think it's the ridge is 6.6 meters on this development, which is completely overshadows Woolpack Yard. And had the plans been different, had they been down to, I know you want to put a 2-meter fence up there, but had they been about 2.5 meters, they would be far more acceptable to the, what do you think?
As I explained in what I've just spoken. I am no expert in planning, and this is exactly why I have brought this to the committee for their deliberation, because there is a difference of opinion between the planning officer and the applicant, who I have respect for both as professionals, and not being in a position to really understand it, and the devil is always in the detail. This is why I've brought it. So I have not an opinion, as I stated.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We'll call you when we've dealt with this item. Thank you. Now we've got any extra comments from the officer.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, there was a lot, I won't go through every single point, but in general, the principle of the proposed flat development in this location is, is accepted. It's critically the impact of residential amenity that is the concern here. So I'd like to make clear that the principle itself of providing smaller accommodation, there is no concern there from policy perspective. There was a lot of questions regarding the parking and the access. The proposal is flat development, which is car free. There is no policy requirement to provide car parking spaces for town centre development. The site itself is currently used for parking by the retail properties, and as far as I'm aware, and I think this has been clarified by the applicant's agent as well, this isn't formally part of the Woolpack Yard parking, and there is no planning permission for either the flats above Market Street or in association with Woolpack Yard that would suggest this site is part of their parking. So therefore, in terms of parking displacement, purely we are considering what the site is currently used for, really, in terms of the retail use, which is, we know that is kind of there. In terms of the comments of Market Street number 32, they have raised concerns of a loss of their parking space. Again, that's potentially more of an ownership matter, of something that's formally been kind of arranged as part of their conversion to a flat. The matter of the gate and the noise has also been raised quite a lot. Again, that is something that hasn't been raised as a concern by the environmental health officer. However, should members see fit, I'm sure a condition could be found to address that matter. And with regards to the construction noise as well, again, conditions can be used to address that matter. We have talked a lot about the scale of development and single story as opposed to two-story. The single story development obviously is proposed closer to the Market Street properties, and potentially they're protecting Market Street properties a little bit more than the Woolpack Yard properties, and that's something that I think has been reflected in my report, that there is obviously an overall concern for Woolpack Yard. So I shall leave it. I'll leave it there, but please feel free to.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, this is on questions for the officer. Thank you. Councillor Lloyd-Jones, did you? So, Councillor Jones. Councillor Brown.
Sorry, Holly, you did sort of intimate that you would clarify the situation on the size guidance
Yes.
in your comments.
Yes.
And sorry if I missed
apologies.
it.
Yes, I did miss that. With regards to size guidance, so as the agent Ruth has correctly stated, it is not an adopted policy of East Cambridge District Council. So on that basis, you will note that it hasn't formed a reason for refusal in its own. It is, however, part of the planning balance. I think I would suggest that members would be conscious that should they wish to approve the application, the balance of providing potentially accommodation that doesn't meet, usually expected standards. However, it's not a reason for refusal on my report, and it is a material consideration, but it's not adopted. So I would say that it should be quite a clear distinction there.
Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of things. Is there any outside storage for bikes and things like that available, since there is no?
Yes, so on the plans, there is a bin store shown, and as well as cycle store, these have been shown enclosed. Specific details not provided. However, again, this could be conditioned as has been done with many sites before.
And if I have one more, Chair, if I may. Just going back to the proposed site layout, it's a little unclear on the drawings that we've got. The double-storey height, so you've got like a dormer bit on the sloped
Yes.
roof going out. It's looking like it sort of misses the line of the wall pack. I'm looking on agenda. item
I'll see if
fi-
I can
things.
find the.
Yeah. That one
So,
there, yeah.
So on the left, yeah, so it doesn't come across all the way. That's correct, obviously, but it does come across quite far in front of, so if I use the pointer. So it ends obviously, oh, sorry, here. So it does come across in terms of there's kind of windows here, first floor, as a ground floor and first floor. So it's not
So that
covering entirely. but
because
it-
I was using the roof line that we've got on the other side to show where the dormer section is. I
Yes.
thought there's some, right, so we've got that. And can you give us the height of the end of the non-dormer section roof line? Because I couldn't see it on the plans.
So we're talking
So-
about there.
If you went on to the next couple of pages, where you've got the roof lines here, I'm looking at,
Ah.
they were talking about a 2 metre height fence being put up. I'm just wondering where the lower end of the roof line.
Are we talking about the eave? So
Yeah, the eaves, where you got the 4.35
there.
meters, yeah,
there,
that one.
I think should have been in my report. If not, I
Sorry.
can take a measurement.
It's 4.35 against the distance against the other one. I'm looking at the height from the ground floor. 4.3, right. Same as the height of the.
It's sorry, my report, it's for eaves between two to 3 to 4.3, which I believe is still 4.3.
I'm not looking about the distance thing. I'm looking.
Yeah, no,
that's
sorry.
Still,
the
it's still
the
going to be
eaves-
ground floor to eaves
Yes, the
height.
eaves
We are looking
themselves are 4.3.
Three, right, okay, sorry, it's just, obviously it's 4.3 mentioned a couple of
Yeah.
times in places, right,
Sorry.
thank you.
Councillor Trout.
Thank you. That was said rather reluctantly, I think. There was a sort of hesitation.
You're mistaken. It's always a pleasure to hear your very extensive.
Thank you very much. Well, you'll hear a bit of it. 2 points. One is that you mentioned that the sun shading, there was seemed to be an inconsistency between the equinoxes. And I always thought that that should be the same. So are you querying that the sun shading may not have been correct, or there was some? Okay.
Thanks.
Your microphone, I think. Your microphone.
Oh, thank you. So to clarify on that point, the sun studies submitted were inaccurate on the March 8 AM and 11 AM. They were showing what I can only presume is it's the sun moving slightly, which obviously is a physical impossibility. This was flagged with the agent because it had to go to committee. It was addressed in the reason
Yes.
for refusal, but it was put as a separate reason for refusal. In the members' update, these were corrected, and on the basis of the corrected sun studies, I am content to recommend that reason, second reason for refusal can be removed. Obviously, what I'm conscious of is that the sun studies provided to members, the revised sun study has not been formally consulted upon. And given that that was a concern raised by Woolpack Yard residents, that's just something to note.
The other question I have is looking at the site plans. Well, first of all, I couldn't really see a mock-up or CGI of the small flat, the flat number 4. I couldn't see it anywhere.
I believe I do have that somewhere. Maybe I don't.
No.
It wasn't exhausted. You can see it here. If I just point up the way there.
And that's behind the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the other thing is looking also at these, this one.
Yes.
It looks like the width of Woolpack Yard, the sort of bit that's the entrance to, is about, I'm looking about 5 meters compared to all your, so which is not going to fit a car. I mean, the car parking, if for Woolpack Yard places, I don't know if that's meant to be there, whether they're meant to be, or
Sorry,
is it meant to be wholly open that?
where are we referencing? Sorry, are we talking
So
about?
I'm talking about just to the east of Woolpack Yard houses.
Yes.
There's the entrance there.
Here?
Yeah,
No, so that's purely pedestrian. That's not for vehicle.
no, it's to the east of,
This?
yes. That's where the electronic gates are going, is that right?
Yes, and that's the existing
Right.
vehicular access.
So there'll be
point.
no parking within that lane in there?
There shouldn't be, no, that's not been formally shown as part of this proposal. And that's kind of the entrance point with the 4 parking spaces shown here.
Right.
So there'll be the turning and
Okay,
manoeuvring space
right.
up there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Can we just clarify, do the gates fold inwards into the property rather than going outwards?
That's not actually something that I'm entirely sure of. That is, however, something that can be conditioned if that's a concern. I would suggest, given that they'd be swinging onto land they don't own, they would need to swing inwards.
Okay, members, I've just got one question. Did the applicant engage in any pre-app consultation with you?
So we have had ongoing discussions on the scheme throughout the proposal. Obviously, it's been in for a while. That's kind of as much as.
So you had ongoing conversations. Have you had a, did they have a,
So pre-application discussions are confidential. So in terms of,
no, so you're avoiding rightly, probably,
I'm conscious of pre-application, obviously.
okay,
to remain
that's fine.
confidential. So
you-
in terms of the discussions throughout this application, obviously we have tried to negotiate, and I appreciate we've reached a bit of an impasse, so which is why we're here today. So
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Number 32 sent in a comment. I can't see number 32 on the map.
it's one of the flats above the 30 and 36.
Oh, okay,
Market
so all
Street.
right, so it's above, yeah, okay, thank you. I seem to be
Fair.
lost.
No, yeah, it's one of those.
okay, members, we now, thank you. We now go on to general debate on this matter. Members. Christine Ambrose Smith, first of all, councillor Jones second, and there may be some more.
Thank
Right,
you.
councillor Brown.
2 or 3 points. Concern was raised about the noise of construction. Further on in the conversation, the First Lady who spoke, she said, well, we probably wouldn't mind 2 flats rather than 4 being built. I would suggest that probably the noise and work involved wouldn't vary very much between 2 or 4. So I think that that is a little confusing. It is possible to, by condition, control the working hours. Concern was raised about deliveries. Well, deliveries happen in the most cramped conditions of towns and cities and villages across the country, and I'm sure that that can be well managed. We still haven't really got to grips with this unofficial but long-standing parking arrangements. Looking at the pictures, the amenity area is hardly rolling acres of greensward, so I would have thought that some tidier buildings as part of the entire site would look better. Certainly, I agree with Councillor Every that an additional 4, albeit small flats. I know the smallest one is of some concern, but I mean, those of us who visit IKEA on regular occasions will know the mock-up small apartments that are shown. There are folding beds, there are all sorts. Someone who is going to rent a small studio is not intending to raise a family there. It's a little more than a hotel room. I don't think that that is a concern. So I think that that's my view on the application.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm sort of loosely an opinion, same opinion. I'd like the idea, actually, I'm quite impressed by the designs generally of it, but it does seem to be awfully close to the neighbouring proximity. It's about two car widths away from it. I do think there is likely to be overshadowing. I think they have made a good attempt, but I think it just needs to be a little bit smaller. Perhaps if they put 3 in or something like that, we might be able to get this through, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be voting. I think I'm going to be going in line with the officer's recommendations currently at the moment, is my view.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Following on from those comments, I think the mass of the 3 flats is too much in such close proximity to Woolpack Yard. I know it's not given as a reason for refusal, but I do give weight to the size of flat 4. And since it's the entire application we're being asked to decide on, I support the officer's recommendation for refusal, and I'm happy to propose that if you so wish.
You're proposing that we go with the officer's recommendation. I will make a note of that proposal, and we'll carry on at the moment. Councillor Trapp.
Thank you very much. I mean, I like the principle of it. I think it's interesting. It's trying to use what looked like quite a derelict space, but like Councillor Brown, like Councillor Jones, I am concerned about the overlooking against the Woolpack Yard, and I don't mind the 29 or 30 square meters flats. I mean, I think they're probably actually what is needed actually for single people or maybe couples, and it is quite possible to live in those, and maybe all 4 should have been 30 square meters, which would have meant a low dent, not so high building, which would be acceptable, I think, in that circumstance. So I must say I'm going to be, I'd like to second Councillor Brown and going with the officer's recommendation of refusal, but actually it's reluctantly because I think it's very necessary, this kind of development.
And we have Councillor Wilson. Thank you. I've noted that you're seconding that. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Originally, when I was at the site, I thought of a 2-story wall in front of those flats, and I thought, oh dear, that looks terrible. When you actually look at the plan, it's not a 2-story wall in front of those flats at all. It's only 1 story and a sloping roof, which really wouldn't cause any great problem, I would have thought, for most of the time. The site is not particularly amenable at the moment. It's a bit scruffy, and I think this development might actually improve things a bit. I very much like the idea of small houses, small flats, because that's what developers don't normally build. They normally want to build 4-story gigantic houses, and because they can get money out of them. But these smaller ones are what people need who can't afford a 4-story big place. And the fact that there's no parking for them, well, they can easily walk to all the amenities in Ely. And so I'm not inclined to reject this. I think I would support the local councillor's view that we need these places. And I look and see that none of the local people, apart from the one lady who actually lives in Woolpack, is actually objecting to this. And we end up with well, people who live next door to any development always object, and the fact that they object to the noise while it's being built, well, if anything's being built, there will be some noise, and that can be mitigated by conditions of timings. So I'm not in favour of rejecting this application, which I thought was actually looks quite pleasant, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. We already have a proposal and a seconder to go to support the officer's recommendation. So in a few minutes' time, I'll be going to the vote for that one. But if it is lost, then I will come back to you and see if you've got anything to say, if that's acceptable to you. And I'd like to make my contribution in that I must say that I think there's this is just, I believe, just a step too far. I agree with Councillor Every, who said it was a good thing to discuss these matters because it's not straightforward. There's some benefits to having these flats, and there's also clearly some concerns. So I feel that we should set high standards, particularly in Ely. It's in a conservation area, and I do believe we should therefore go along with the officer's recommendation, and I will be backing the proposal that has come from Councillor Brown. Any other members? Yes, you can.
Could I just check? The officer had said the second reason could be removed. So is the proposal for both reasons in the paper or just one?
I'm taking that as it's on grounds one only. Am I right, Councillor Brown? Oh,
Chairman, I said I was supporting the officer's recommendation. If the officer has changed the recommendation, I'm still supporting her first
yeah,
recommendation
I
anyway.
would
so.
totally agree with that, and that's okay with you, Councillor Trapp.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, I think it's fairly clear. It's clear enough for me to go to the vote anyway. So would those who are in favour of the proposal from Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Trapp, that we go with the officer's recommendation, and by that we mean item one only. Will those in favour please raise their hands? And those against, please raise their hands. I didn't miss any abstentions, did I? No.
The motion is passed with 6 votes in favour and 2 votes against.
Okay, so the decision is that the committee accepts the officer's recommendation, and yes, and if you'd get Councillor Every, that would be helpful. If those of you'd like to leave, if you want to, you're welcome to leave now, or you're welcome to stay. Okay, thank you. We now move on to item number 6 and the officer's recommendation or report, please.
Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This application is agenda item 6 concerning the first of the reserved matters pursuant to the outline planning permission 18-00752 ESO to create a perimeter road around the south and west sides of the site, linking the approved roundabout junctions to deliver the bypass to the village and the main access to Kennet Garden Village. The site is southwest of 9138 Station Road, and the applicant is Bellway Homes. And the first slide is the application site. It's being considered by committee due to the size and scale of the development and a matter of public interest. The site in question is outlined in red. So it's that slither that's starting to the north of the site, up here, and then just ending here. So everything else outlined in blue isn't going to be considered within this application. It's just by illustration purposes only to show you the larger site area. So again, this is the first phase, 1A of the Kennet Garden Village Reserve Matters application. So the larger site area is 99 acres or 40 hectares, and it's arable farmland, as our members saw on the bus this morning. The outline was approved in April 2019. And again, as I said, the perimeter road is the first of the Reserve Matters application for the Kennet Garden Village. Okay, so we did a quick drive by this morning. Very nice, clear, bright day. Again, the wider application site area is on the left-hand side. And then you've got views of the school. We visited the station. And then there's a view on the right-hand side of Station Road by the commercial area. So here we have in all its glory. At the top of the site, you have the roundabout one, which is, I've put it in the report as the northern section. That would be a 60 mph to roundabout 2 here, where it continues into 30 mph down to the last roundabout in the northern section. So the object of the application is to construct the perimeter road to allow access into the site. Just to draw members' attention to the phasing plan. So as we've mentioned, this is one of the first reserve matters, and that is outlined in sort of pinky red here on the left-hand side. The yellow shading areas denote the residential phases. There is an application currently pending consideration regarding phase 1B, which is the residential elements. The lavender area, not really lavender, but it's near as damn it. And that denotes the primary school site. And then the other land parcels will be coming forward in successive planning applications. Again, the material planning considerations of principle of development, residential amenity, visual amenity, highways, ecology and green infrastructure and other matters. Again, the principle of development of constructing a garden village extension to Kennet was agreed to outline in 2019. The outline dealt with up to 500 dwellings, a village core, a local centre, elderly care centre, a village green, tumulus meadows where the scheduled ancient monument is located, a primary school, an enterprise park and the perimeter road with the 3 new junctions which we're considering. The proposal accords with the principles established at outline and is considered acceptable in principle. Again, residential amenity. I need to reiterate that there are no dwellings proposed within this Reserve Matters application. Therefore, we're really sort of only looking at the impact on existing residents because there aren't any future ones at the moment. So during construction, there would be an impact on the existing occupiers. However, it is considered that the mitigation proposed would keep the degree of harm to an acceptable amount. Obviously, during the operational phases of development, when the road is open, it is considered the residential amenity of existing occupiers would be considerably improved. And that's the reason for that is that now the road, once the perimeter road would be open, it would be conveying the HGV traffic, which are currently using it, off of that road and through the perimeter road. Again, this is taken from the first slide is taken from the area where the station or the railway line runs, and then the second slide is looking from Danehill Road across the site. Okay, so the northern section to do with landscaping. This is the Danehill Road roundabout. It's described within the design code as a woodland edge. And therefore, the aim is to extend the existing wooded character within the Kennet Garden Village area to create a vertical element within the site. And then down the south and the southern section, there'd be small pockets of trees and shrubs with meadow grassland and wetland mixtures. Just here, where the cursor's pointing, that's where the allotments are proposed along part of the road. So highways. Again, from the northern roundabout to roundabout 2 in the centre of the site, the speed limit would be unrestricted at 60 miles an hour. Incidentally, the entire length of the road from the northern roundabout to the southern roundabout is 3/4 of a mile. So, and then from the second roundabout here to Station Road, the speed limit would be reduced to 30 miles an hour. So here we have in all its glory, the northern roundabout, the new junction at Danehill Lane, at Danehill Road. So we travelled again this way, didn't we, this morning? There's the entrance into the future county wildlife site and then conveying traffic further down Danehill Road to Station Road. The red line here is the shared cycleway and footpath that will follow the whole length of the road. Here we have the central roundabout. Again, the footpath crossing over the secondary road, which will again be considered when we're looking at the residential phases. And here we have the southern roundabout, the new junction with Station Road. So turning to ecology and green infrastructure, as part of the Reserve Matters application, landscaping, biodiversity and green infrastructure play an important role in the evolving nature of the Kennet Garden Village natural environment, and the information supplied provides a sound basis for the management and enhancement of habitats and species across the site. In terms of other matters of historic environment, flood risk, drainage, the information submitted with the application has been considered acceptable. And therefore the recommendation of the development as the principle of development has been previously considered acceptable. And this application represents the first phase of the development, which is to construct the perimeter road. The scheme accords with both national and local planning policy and is considered acceptable. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Michael Smith, the applicant's agent. I'm sure you know that it's 5 minutes, Mr. Smith, and you need to turn your microphone on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And on behalf of the applicants, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee this afternoon. The application seeks approval for the perimeter road that runs around the west and south side of Kennet Garden Village. And as you've heard from the case officer, it will provide the principal entrance into the scheme that will soon deliver new homes, a primary school, local shops and services, a village green and a village square, a retirement village, and commercial area for business use. It will also act as the bypass for Kennet, taking through traffic away from Station Road, so the existing street does not become a barrier that prevents new residents and facilities integrating into the village. Kennet Garden Village is being created as an infrastructure-first, community-led development, and the delivery of the perimeter road is the first and most crucial part of being able to implement the master plan and making a successful community. The route of the perimeter road was set by the master plan, parameter plans, and design code that accompany the outline plan permission, with the detailed design at the Reserve Matters stage reflecting the standards set by Cambridgeshire County Council for the adoption of the road. We have worked hard with officers at the district and county councils and with their partners at the Community Land Trust, and we thank them for their involvement in creating the scheme that is presented to you this afternoon. We work together to make sure that the proposed scheme meets all the required technical standards, accords with the approved drawings and the principles of the design code, and will be as safe as possible to use and creates a landscape setting for the garden village. As you've seen, the northern section travelling south from the new roundabout on Danehill Road is designed to the standards for traffic travelling at up to 60 miles per hour, and it will read as a continuation of the existing road that heads towards the village from the A11. New homes in residential phase 2 will be set back from the street on the eastern side, stood behind a landscape buffer and a sustainable drainage infrastructure, so that it deliver a transition between the new built-up area and the farmland on the far side of the new road. Details of the second phase will be submitted at a later date and will respond to the setting created by the perimeter road. The roundabout in the middle of the perimeter road provides the main entrance into the garden village and also marks the point where the character between the streets changes, allowing the speed limit to drop to 30 miles an hour. Passing between the retirement village, village centre and the new homes in residential phase 1 to the north and the commercial land to the south, the landscape setting remains, but the street gains a more urban character. The new homes are placed much closer to the street. The drainage infrastructure is used to create features, and paths to both sides are connected by islands to provide safe crossing points for pedestrians and cyclists. To the south of the southern roundabout, the proposed scheme includes the new allotments that are one of the community benefits delivered by the creation of the Garden Village. 16 plots, that's 10 large and 6 small, plus a communal tap in the middle, sit between Station Road and the employment land, enclosed by a fence and a native mixed hedgerow to continue the landscaped edge to the street. A new path is added on the west side of Station Road and will extend beyond the application boundary to the railway station, with the last section delivered through alterations to the existing highway and not requiring approval at the reserve matter stage. The proposed perimeter road is the first step in the creation of Kennet Garden Village and will provide vehicle access to the new homes, the primary school, the local shops and services, retirement village, and the business uses, as well as delivering a landscape setting for the new development. It will also create a bypass for the village, drastically reducing the amount of traffic using Station Road so that connections across the existing street can be formed, linking the community together and encouraging residents to make active travel choices so they can leave their cars at home for short journeys. On behalf of the applicant and the Community Land Trust, I will leave you to concur with the case officer's recommendation and resolve to approve this application.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Members, questions for Mr. Smith?
Can I go?
Well, I thought.
Have I got your permission?
Yes, you, well, please go ahead.
I mean, maybe for the case officer or planning officer, but I noticed that the cycle path at the eastern, by the eastern roundabout is going to be a tunnel, I think. Did I notice that or not? No. Is that a tunnel or a zebra crossing? But no, I'm talking about the eastern one, right by Station Road. Next one. It looks like the cycle path there is going under the road.
No, councillor, everything's on the level, so you're crossing on the level. There's no subways or footbridges proposed.
Right, so you're getting all that traffic there and you're trying to cross that road. An
Yes. The
increased
honest answer
traffic from.
is yes, and there were surveys carried out as part of the outline plan commission. The roundabout design is already approved. You can see we've got an island, so you've got a safe refuge, and it's an island wide enough that you can stand with your bike. It's not a tiny narrow one; it's quite a wide
I
one.
still think that would be rather dangerous. I mean, there's a wonderful underpass under the A14, which I use when I was commuting to Cambridge, and maybe that would be a recommendation I would like to see for safer cycling.
We've worked with the county council.
Yeah, I
and
know,
this meets their standards. That's all I can offer you this afternoon.
They don't have any idea of what should be happening. They're car bound. Thank you very much. Then that's all.
Thank you. I think you've answered all our questions. Thank you. Now we have we've got Councillor Huffer. You have already declared an interest, so you're going to speak as a ward member, answer any questions, and then leave the room for the balance of this item.
Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the Planning Committee for letting me address you today. The issue of traffic of all types has always been the most discussed topic at Kennet Parish Council. From my first attendance in May 2015, the Parish Council has worked tirelessly to try and slow or deter the traffic from coming past the primary school and homes on Station Road. I was present at the first meeting of the CLT in Kennet when the subject of the relief road was first discussed, and it was decided that the Kennet Garden Village would be infrastructure-led, along with other vital services such as a new school, a shop, truly affordable housing for local people. This was the answer to the issues of traffic on Station Road. The dedicated board members of the CLT have worked tirelessly to deliver a wonderful scheme for the people of Kennet, and most importantly, this much wanted relief road. Can I take this opportunity to thank both the CLT and Bellway Homes for their hard work in bringing this forward. They have worked tirelessly to ensure that all that was promised will be delivered to the benefit of current and future members of the Kennet Garden Village. I would ask the committee to agree with the officer's recommendation and allow this first step in this much anticipated development to take place. And could I just mention the underpass that Councillor Trap suggested, I think there is a huge difference between traffic going from one side of the road in Kennet to traffic going from one side of the other road in Cambridge. I don't think it would warrant an underpass, frankly. Thank you, Chair. That's all I have to say.
Members, have you got questions for councillor Hupper?
I have to. Maybe, but I attended the Sustrans with a meeting yesterday with Councillor Edwards and Councillor Brown. And it was clear from there that if one is going to be making or creating cycle paths, one ought to make them to a high standard. And one of the things there, I think you remember from the conversation, that it was something like 3 meters, and even things like crossing the Burwell Road was going to be a overpass. So putting an underpass in at this time is actually something which is going to and if we're encouraging people to cycle, this is absolutely essential.
Of course you are.
Sounded suspiciously like a statement, Councillor Pratt.
Well, there was a question mark at the end of it.
Oh, well,
Are you going against Sus?
oh, no, I'm absolutely not against Sustrans, but I think you've got to get things into proportion. And I'm sure that should the need arise, the parish council could look at the possibility of putting a pedestrian crossing on that area to ensure safe passage should the need arise. I feel, however, that need will not arise as Kennet have successfully obtained a TRO to prevent any vehicles over 7.5 tons using that bridge, which will reduce the amount of heavy and high volume traffic using that road to get cut through to the A11.
I know you weren't with us, councillor Hupper, but our minibus this morning was too heavy and too large to go over that bridge.
I'm making no comment at all, councillor Hunt.
Thank you.
We did offer to climb out.
Any more questions for councillor Wilson?
Can you explain why a portion of this road is 60 miles an hour and the other portion of it is 30 miles an hour?
Councillor Wilson, that's a very good question, and you need to refer your question to county highways, because I have to tell you that the parish council wanted 30, at the maximum 40 miles an hour all the way along, but county highways just simply wouldn't play ball. And I thought if the committee and the chair were to write to county highways to say, could they please listen to the local people and make it 30 miles an hour, just because it's difficult doesn't mean to say it can't be done. Whether or not that would have any sway whatsoever, I don't know. But I do know the parish council were deeply disappointed that their pleas for a constant 30 miles an hour all the way along that road were completely ignored.
Just for information, our job is a planning committee, and we are here to either approve or disapprove of this application. Opening up anything about altering the speed limits would, from my experience, just add another 2 or 3 years to the whole business.
I completely agree. I mean, I can see that the parish council will probably have to spend some money on an LHI bid in the future, trying to get it reduced to 30 miles an hour, but that's for the future.
Now we've got any more comments from the officer?
Do apologise. Yeah, just 2 observations regarding the crossing at the foot of the scheme. All I would say is that currently the B1085 is a 40 mile an hour road where children are crossing at the moment. The new the crossing here at the just before roundabout 3 is 30 mile an hour. vehicles will be slowing down because they are going to be entering the roundabout. So they will be the stopping or sort of at, they will be at reduced speed. And and the scheme has sort of passed a road safety audit by the police. So I'm quite satisfied that it is a safe road for pedestrians and cyclists to use. Turning now to the issue of the 60 mile an hour. Yes, it's a fast route. There's been much discussion between county highways, the council, the developers and the police regarding the speed of the road. And unfortunately, that is the requirement of the police at the moment, that the speed of the road is unregulated at 60 miles an hour. What happens after the application is approved is something that may transpire, that we can get the speed of the road reduced, but at the moment, that's the application, it's 60 miles an hour.
And that's, you've finished your comments now.
I think there only were two, weren't there?
Well, no, it's up to you. It's, anyway, we've finished. Now, members, questions to the officer. Councillor Brown and Councillor Jones, I've seen already.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Anne. Straight question on this, on these speed limits. Can you clarify for me whether actually the planning committee has any role in setting speed limits?
Short answer, no.
Thank you. That's what I've thought.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification's sake, we've been talking about crossings. We are talking about zebra crossings, not pelican or toucan crossings. i.e. traffic light crossings rather than a zebra crossing without.
As far as I understand, I think that's just going to be a zebra crossing.
Councillor Cramp.
Thank you very much. Actually, I was wondering why the whole of that bypass shouldn't be 60 miles an hour, because you've got nice roundabouts control speed. The other one is you've got a no limit sign on top. Where does the 40 mile an hour speed limit then come into when you come into the village? Is it 30?
I think it's somewhere up here. It's very,
Is it 40
Yeah.
along there?
yeah. So and when we're entering, got to look this morning because that was something that I did need to sort of
Yeah.
clarify. Sorry. Oh, sorry. I thought you were.
I've got more questions, but
So if I could clarify, because that's a road that I use regularly, and the 40 mile an hour bit starts much farther to the west than the roundabout. Sorry, to the east. It's this side.
yeah.
Yeah, I was right. To the left-hand side as I'm looking at it, which is west.
That's west.
Towards the proposal, towards the proposal. I think that's what you're suggesting.
Yeah. No, the other way.
Other way.
Where you've got the box, the proposal. 40 mile an hour bit starts somewhere around there.
There's going to be no limit for a longer period now. I mean, I think it was
Councillor, if I can clarify the situation where Councillor Brown said, was this a matter that could be dealt with
Yeah,
by the
okay,
planning
right,
committee? It is not.
Okay, all right.
And I think we should just bear that in mind. And have you any other questions?
Yes, I do. I'm
But
sorry.
do not
I'm
include.
going back about the cycle thing. If you're putting it, I mean, the thing about an underpass is that it's so much easier to put in before the road is built. You just cut and paint, put a tunnel, and there we are. So much easier. And I would say it really, the expense of it compared to this whole development is minuscule. And it will make cycling much more attractive, much easier. Quite honestly, and the main cycling, a lot of cycling will be in the morning or afternoon. We're using the 2-hourly rail station, shall we say, when actually the traffic will be higher. So I would say, why not to just get on with it and put it in now and do it? What?
we have, as we've often said here, councillor Trapp, the opportunity to either approve of the application that is in front of us or disapprove of it.
Well, that tells me which way I should be going. Thank you.
Well, that's entirely your choice. Members. I think we can just go into the, councillor Every, this is.
Are you, sorry, I may have preempted. Are you in discussion yet? Because I was putting my hand up for discussion, debate.
I was about to, but we hadn't yet.
Right, sorry.
So we are now going into debate, and members, councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry, I jumped in. I apologise for that. We had a really good trip around here today. We saw it absolutely. We are only looking at agreeing or not agreeing the proposal that we have in front of us and with the parameters that we can work within. I was very impressed with the report by our planner, who's very thorough as always, but even more so, I was impressed by the fact that our ward member was able to say that people had worked so carefully together that the parish council, the ward member and the housing developer had worked together, and her urge to us was to agree with the recommendation. So I'm quite happy to propose that we agree with the officer's recommendation as it stands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'll actually put my name as the second speaker on this occasion, and I will speak now as a member rather than as a chairman. And I would like to second your proposal, and the officer will make a note of that. I think it's fair to say that we've all heard in our lives about infrastructure being needed before development, and we've all tried to get this done. Well, here is an example, as far as I can see it, there's an example here of infrastructure going in first, which I think is very much to be encouraged and supported. I also look at, when I read the agenda, and I couldn't count exactly because there were so many of various consultees were either in favour or made no comment, and there was nothing in objection to this. I think when you consider that when houses are built, there's normally a cry from residents about, oh, we need a bypass, or we need to get the traffic out of the way. Well, this is the first thing that's going to happen there, if it happens, and we are minded to approve it. And so the road is the first item on the agenda in phase one. And I also look at the railway bridge, which is limited to a very light commercial vehicle. And if you look at it carefully, you'll see that there's pavements on the side. It's not a temporary situation that's just been put up for the next month or two. There's a pavement there and there's curbstones, and it is a fairly long-term modification to that bridge. So I think the likelihood of heavy goods vehicles going over that bridge in the near future have long gone. That's my view anyway. So I will be supporting Councillor Every's proposal, but we continue with the debate, members. Councillor Trump.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I think unless one can put a condition in on 5, all necessary off-site cycle infrastructure of having a tunnel, I'm not going to be voting for this. I think one ought to be going straight for the best possible solution right now when it's much easier to do. I like everything else, but I do think the cycling infrastructure should be actually for village, for a development this size, should be paramount.
Thank you, Councillor Trump. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. As condition 5 says, that's all down to the Highway Authority through the section 278 agreement. It's nothing to do with us again. I'm supporting Councillor Everett and yourself.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. No, I think I'm broadly in support of this. while councillor Trapp's idea of a tunnel may be nice, I do think perhaps it might be under the water line there. It might be flooded more often and it would be usable for a bike. So I'm not sure that'd be sensible. But anyway, still irrelevant, and I'm still in favour of this.
Other members? I'd just like members to be aware that a tunnel was built under the A10 at the leisure centre. This was surveys had indicated it was going to be highly used, and it was. Now, when this was costed was some considerable time ago, and the cost was far in excess of £1 million. And there, of course, you had a high-speed A10. This is a statement from me, Councillor, that I will allow you to ask a question.
No, I'm not answering a question. I'm saying that the A10 was already in existence and therefore the tunnel was much more expensive. Whereas if it's laid before the road, it's much cheaper.
Yes. However, thank you for your comments. Any other comments why we don't go to a vote now? You have Councillor Every's proposal that we accept the officer's recommendation, and that has been seconded by me. Will those in favour of that please raise their hand? No, still got it? Okay, and those against, please raise their hands. Okay.
The motion is passed with 7 votes in favour, 1 vote against and no abstentions.
So the that application has been approved. Thank you very much. You are, Councillor Brown's gone to get I've been requested to call a short break, so we will resume at 10:02 as on that clock up there, and that's the definitive clock. So I make that 6 minutes. Can we please now resume? And this committee is now in session. And we're looking to item number 7. And Gavin is going to make a presentation about 164 dwellings in Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Yes, agenda item 7, reserve matters application for 164 dwellings, including obviously the infrastructure to support it at land adjacent to 43 Meeple Road, Sutton. I'd just like to bring members' attention to the update sheet circulated, I believe, yesterday, just in respect of amendments to Appendix 1, which was the planning conditions, particularly obviously in respect of the amendments to the plan scheduler. There were some duplications there and a couple of plans omitted. That's been updated. And then also the amendments to condition 6 in respect of biodiversity delivery, and also condition 9, just to clarify in terms of driveway provision to be sort of built out concurrently with the dwellings. So just looking at the application site, edge red on the plan, sits to the north of Sutton. It's allocated for residential development through the Sutton neighbourhood plan for around 250 dwellings. And that also includes the parcel of land immediately to the southeast as well, which is, as you've seen today from the bus visit, it's been sort of built out and nearing completion, which is a scheme for 70 dwellings. And just note the A142, which sweeps across that northeast corner of that site there. So just an aerial photograph of the same. As you can see, currently agricultural. There's a grouping of agricultural buildings where the proposed pitches are supposed to go, the sports pitches. Obviously the phase 1 development for Vistry homes, again, which we visited today. And just obviously note that the site also abuts sort of St Andrew's Close, and obviously that orchards development as well to the south of the site. So just some very quick pictures for street scenes. This is taken at the northeast of the site, as you can see from the aerial plan at the top right there. So looking back, and you can see the buildings of the phase 1 development, and obviously the main site in the foreground there. And there's a footway that currently exists that actually leads up and across the road to the Elan Business Park as well there. And this is a view from Stimpson Street. So this is essentially the first turning head as you come in, as you can see from the yellow arrow there, which sort of shows the outlook, currently fenced off while they're undertaking the archaeological work. And you can see sort of views of that turning head sort of facing west and facing east. Again, just to obviously give you an idea of perhaps some of the house types that are in existence there as well. And this is where essentially we drove up today on the bus to park up at that turning head to sort of give some context of where we were. And again, you just see some of those pictures of those dwellings as well, just to give you an idea of the house types that exist. And this is a view taken from essentially the end where the sports pitches are proposed to go. So you can see St Andrew's Close there at the very edge, and then the Stimpson Street development where, again, we visited today, just to sort of show you sort of the outlook from that area as you would approach from that access road leading up to those sports pitch areas. So just to recap, this is a reserve matters application for layout, scale, appearance and landscaping. The access was approved at outline stage, so it's not committed detail of this application. The outline also secured conditions to require certain matters to be agreed through the reserve matters application in respect to biodiversity, achieving net gain, noise understanding and mitigation, and demonstration of energy and sustainability strategy. So the main considerations really are just principle of development, general layout, including any highways impacts, visual amenity, the landscaping, including that biodiversity that we talked about there a minute ago, the residential amenity in terms of impacts on existing occupiers and future occupiers, and then obviously there are some other considerations. So just to recap, the outline permission was secured under a 2019 planning application for up to 173 dwellings, including sports pitches, burial ground, affordable housing and open space. What you see here is the concept plan in the neighbourhood plan, Sutton neighbourhood plan, which sort of shows how they envisage it should be delivered, which again just shows 2 points of access. So that first point there is serving phase 1 that I spoke about a short while ago, a new road access serving the application under consideration today, landscaping and wildlife areas and the perimeter of the site with sports pitches, playing fields and burial ground at that sort of northwest corner. And obviously securing as much permeability from this site to the existing settlement. So just looking at layout, the general layout relies on a main spine road that runs through the site and leading sort of southwards, and then also to the northwest there to the burial ground. These are then supported by secondary streets, sort of shown in that pinky orange colour, which are shared surface streets, and then they lead on to sort of tertiary streets serving small pockets of dwellings on private drives there. And you can see the area of open space along the northern perimeter and also along the southern perimeter there, with sort of a buffer area where the suds go as well, swales, etc. There's an area of orchard proposed, and obviously, I say that landscape buffer across the top there as sort of really set out in that concept strategy. So just in terms of sort of the layout again, so one part of the concept plan was really to try and secure as best connectivity as possible throughout the site into the existing settlement. So we've got where we park today, there's a pedestrian cycle link through into obviously the existing settlement area. There's also links through into Orchard Estate, and then also links to the sports pitches, which will also take you down and around to sort of Stirling Street. And obviously then in addition to that, there is a sort of almost a loop pathway proposed around to access the areas of open space as well. So it's considered there's good permeability through that site. The sort of bluey green circles denote the dispersal of affordable housing, which is considered to be adequately dispersed across the site rather than clustered in one area, which wouldn't be appropriate. Just to point out the areas of self-build dwellings, which are not a commitment of this scheme, located in that northwest corner of the site there. There's supposed to be 9 of those. And again, just as you can see there, the sports pitches, and then to the north would be the burial ground. The actual precise details are required through as part of the Section 106 agreement in terms of the burial ground scheme and the community facilities scheme. But nonetheless, you can sort of see their locations relative to the layout here. And again, just in terms of suds, we've got a attenuation pond and an array of swales that obviously would take surface water from that site. Just in terms of visual amenity, so you just see a few of the house types proposed on the left-hand side of the screen there. As you can see, there's sort of various colour sort of circles and blobs on the plan, which denote different materials. So different roof tile colours, different external brick colours. So mixtures of buff blends, red blends. There are some areas of render as well on some of these corner turning buildings, which will sort of act as way markers throughout the site, sort of add a bit of interest and break up the street scene somewhat as well. And you can see there's an array of house types. We've got some with chimneys that are located sort of along the perimeters of the site, shown with these orange stars, which again, when you look at it approaching sort of from the A142 across the countryside, you'll see those sort of adding a bit of interest to the roofscape of the development. You've also got some sort of 2.5-storey dwellings. There's only 4 of those arranged in 2 pairs, and they front right onto the spine road. There's one sort of halfway along the road and then one a little bit further on. But they're quite limited in terms of numbers. And there's also some bungalows provided on the layout as well, which are grouped in pairs to the sort of north middle part of the development. So as you can see from the sort of the general layout, the sort of scheme is designed really to be perhaps a bit denser along that spine road, and then far more looser knit around the edges, and perhaps less sort of less formal in terms of their arrangement, which is really trying to respond to the sort of the open countryside area there. So just in terms of landscaping, so it's quite a comprehensive landscape scheme been submitted with this application. I won't go into the full detail of it, but in brief, we've got an area of orchard to the south. We've obviously got various areas of planting and soft planting along that northern perimeter and also down that western edge where it then leads into those sports pitches. The actual application relies on a delivery of a bund on the northeastern corner of the site to defend some noise against the A142, which is proposed here. And you can see the sort of the illustrative diagram as to how that's going to appear. So planted out. So actually that will create quite a substantial area of screening, notwithstanding the noise mitigation as well. And just really in terms of just again permeability, we've got an emergency access link leading into the existing Stirling Street development. In the event that this access is compromised for emergency services, they'll still be able to get through there. Just in terms of residential amenity, there has been a concern raised by a local resident in terms of sort of overbearing, overlooking, overshadowing issues. That is addressed in the report, but having regard to the separation distance between the development proposed here and the existing houses along the perimeter there's deemed to be quite a good separation distance actually between the two. So you're not going to result in any overshadowing, overbearing or visual dominance issues because of the buffers that have been created there. The dwellings themselves are considered to be appropriately spaced, served with adequate gardens in accordance with policy. And obviously, as noted in the report, there's adequate on-site parking per dwelling, which and also some additional visitor parking as well. The main constraint of this development, though, has been identified to be noise, which was identified at the time of the outline application. So the outline application required a noise impact assessment and suite of mitigation measures. So the noise impact assessment essentially sort of identified there are a number of properties, particularly on the eastern and northeastern perimeter of the site, that were going to be affected by road noise from that A142. To clarify, the actual noise will only affect first floor areas. The ground floor are actually protected by virtue of that noise bund. And also the rear gardens would be protected by virtue of their sort of boundary treatments, fences, walls, etc. So the red markers essentially denote areas where noise would likely be higher than would result in acceptable internal noise levels. So we're looking at around about 50 dBs. Anything above that, with a window open, you'd start to perhaps get unacceptable noise levels. So we're looking generally at about 35 dB internal noise levels. So they say with a window partially open, that'll defend about 15 dBs off. So we look at 50 dBs as max, ideally. Some of these are hitting 54, 55 dBs. So we are in excess of where we want to be with some of those. So officers have engaged with the applicant in detail on this to try and see what can be done to sort of overcome some of these issues. The first thing we did was to try and establish actually what the impact would be if we didn't build on this particular area. So the plan really shows the area of noise that would wash over the site if there was no built form on that eastern edge. And as you can see, it does take out probably around about a third of the site. So it is important that actually we do have built form on this edge here in order to defend the rest of the site to enable that to come forward. In order to really sort of secure adequate internal living environments for occupiers in their upper floor rooms. So the applicant has sort of looked at the individual house types that are affected on a one-to-one sort of basis, and has introduced either some additional windows into the property where they can be opened in order so that people can naturally ventilate their properties, or reorientated or changed the actual house types. What it has led to, though, is a number of properties where it isn't going to be possible to adequately defend noise on some of the bedrooms at first floor without the means of mechanical ventilation. I'll skip one there. So it is necessary in order for this scheme to come forward to deliver some of the properties with mechanical ventilation serving some of those bedrooms. And there's a bit more detail in the report of that. So essentially, there's about 11 dwellings affected, 11 to 13 dwellings affected. Of those 11 dwellings, 3 of the properties would require all of the bedrooms to be served by mechanical ventilation. Now, they would still have windows to be able to be opened, but it would be likely or possible that if they did so, they may sort of find themselves in an environment where noise levels may exceed that 35 dB. Obviously, the noise levels that were taken are worst case. So we have to sort of understand that, you know, it may not always be as bad as the picture paints, but nonetheless, we have to mitigate on a worst case scenario. So essentially, we do have a few bedrooms that rely on mechanical ventilation. So whilst that's not ideal, obviously given sort of what it actually will mean for the rest of the site, it's considered on balance on this occasion that is an acceptable means to mitigate noise on this occasion. Just in terms of drainage, because I think historically with this site there were some concerns raised, although we don't have any objections on drainage basis with this application currently. So the applicant has sought to get agreement from the Lead Local Flood Authority in terms of an appropriate drainage scheme. The Lead Local Flood Authority are happy with the scheme in terms of sustainable drainage measures. Anglian Water are also happy with foul drainage. There is a separate condition under the outline that requires this to be discharged separately, but nonetheless, the applicant has sought some comfort in the layout they're proposing in order to ensure that it can deliver a suitable scheme with a sustainable drainage. Just on that point, it's noted that some of the surfacing for some of the roadways, particularly the private drives, are either going to be tarmac or block paving. This is yet to be sort of finalised, so I would ask that officers would recommend an additional condition to the ones that are already listed, just to secure final surfacing to those driveways and roadways, just so that we can make sure that it responds positively to the final drainage strategy agreed. So just in summary then, the development largely accords with that concept plan that I showed earlier under the Sutton Neighbourhood Plan. It's considered that there's good connectivity to open space and the wider settlement as well, sort of in terms of promoting, you know, non-car modes of travel, sustainable means of travel. The visual impacts are considered to be acceptable with quite a robust and appropriate landscaping scheme. And on balance, looking across the whole site, high levels of amenity would be achieved, although we do note that obviously there are some slight disbenefits with the reliance on mechanical ventilation. The scheme would deliver measurable net gains in biodiversity, and it accords with the aims of the Climate Change SPD in respect of energy and sustainability. And again, as I say, the drainage strategy has been agreed in principle, which is, you know, some comfort to all that if it comes forward, it's unlikely to result in unacceptable flood impacts. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that very comprehensive report. Rebecca Smith, on behalf of the applicant. I think you know how it goes. It's 5 minutes in total. The amber light comes on at 4, and you've already pressed the microphone.
Yeah.
Start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon all. As the Chair said, my name is Rebecca Smith. I'm a senior planner at Vistry Homes. I've been working on the site for a number of years and was the planning agent at the outline planning application stage. So I'm pleased that the reserve matters for the 164 dwellings alongside the public open space, Village Green and Pictures is before you today with an officer recommendation for approval. I will keep this brief actually because I think Gavin, planning officer, has done a thorough job in terms of his report and today's presentation in setting out the main planning considerations specific to this site at the reserve matters stage in the context of that outline planning permission. I feel throughout the process we have tried our best to work with officers, consultees, the parish council, local residents in taking on board their comments on how they want to see this neighbourhood plan site come forward. I think we've ended up with no technical objections or anything to the site. I do believe what we have here will be is a well-designed, visually attractive place to live. We have enhanced it slightly from our phase one Linden Homes development in terms of the dwelling types, maybe the elevational detail and the materials used. But it's going to be hopefully set, and you'll see along there sort of more some tree-lined streets in accordance with where the MPPF is going in terms of bringing in the landscape into the public realm, creating a nice environment. So yeah, I hope you endorse your officer's recommendation for approval and approve this application today. I will have the pleasure of seeing this one hopefully come out the ground fairly soon. But if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you just hang on a second, we've already got members wishing to ask. Christine Ambrose Smith.
Hi,
Did I see any other members? Yes.
the officer's report did detailing quite an amount of detail about the noise on the upper story of the houses on that right-hand edge. Given that you've already got some bungalows within the site, would it have not made sense to have placed the bungalows there, or doesn't noise work like that?
I know.
I've had to be told otherwise.
I've had many a discussion with our acoustic noise consultants on this, our engineers, in terms of what we can do to mitigate the noise from the A142. We always knew it was a constraint to this development. There would be some necessary for a built form along there. So you have that built form as an additional barrier. So if you drop that, then the noise just does fall further into the site. And I think that image sort of shows that. Into then the next row of dwellings and along, yes.
Councillor Huffer.
I could be completely not seeing it, but there doesn't appear to be any play equipment on either of the sites. I don't know if it's just not shown or whether or not there is play. I know you've got the village green and the sports fields, but they're bound to be a percentage of quite young children who aren't going to be doing sports straight away.
Yep. So like I say, on the phase one, there is already a play area in place. We have that central, the arrows on it, locally equipped area of play, about 400 square meters, your standard play area. And then up on the northeastern corner is more of a incidental local area of play more. And it's looking at more natural based timber products, accessible to as many people as possible. So that'll be on.
And is
provided.
that for able-bodied and non-able-bodied children?
Yeah, so what we're looking at, our soft landscaping plans have specified some equipment, but we're working with suppliers at the moment in terms of you can get pieces of equipment that are accessible for all. So I'm thinking you can have the swing that everyone can sit on, you can get roundabouts where everyone can use them.
You could also get a roundabout that's sunk into the ground, so you can just put a wheelchair or a buggy straight onto it.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Are all the roads going to be adopted by the Highways Authority?
Yeah, so we work closely with Cambridgeshire County Council, the highways engineer, to make sure that the main spine road will be adopted, those secondary shared surface streets will be adopted, and then the tertiary private drives will remain under private ownership. And so the road hierarchy meets what the adoption requirements of county are.
Can I come back on? Does that mean that our rubbish vehicles will not be able to go down these orange vehicles, because we don't want people putting lots of bins at the end of streets?
Yeah, so they'll go down the orange. So that's why you've kind of unfortunately have to have these turning heads, because that's a requirement for refuse and for emergency vehicles as well, especially fire tenders. So residents along those sort of blue private drive areas would need to bring their bins up to the adoptable highway. We will provide through the next stage of the detailed design sort of bin collection points. So we do put slabs down for residents that they can bring their bins to.
I don't know if shrugging the shoulders is an application to speak or not. Are you after speaking? No? No? Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you, sorry. Just wondering, obviously, you've got the turning heads and then you've got the sort of tertiary roads as the planning officer described them. Obviously, you've got the blockages to stop a sort of rat run forming. Have they got a sort of cycle path through those green bits, or do you have to go on the outside path to cycle round? Does that make sense?
So throughout the development, there will be some on-street cycling, which low vehicle speeds. There's obviously footways along the main spine road. There's not like are you sort of thinking about a dedicated cycle lane? It is the fact that we
I
have.
was looking more at the top road. I mean, if,
Yeah.
you know, somebody lives at one end and he got a child, wants to go and see his friend at the other end.
Yeah.
Has he got to go down to the spine road along? Or I think we can see there's a dedicated
Oh,
footpath
yeah.
above. What
Yeah,
I'm saying
so-
is there a cut through on the green bits separating the tertiary roads?
Yeah.
Or are they going to be cycling over
So
greenery?
agreed with Gavin, the additional condition to put on the reserve matters that will submit some further detail about the treatment of that northern footpath. At first, it was envisioned that this northern bit would be a bit more of a natural wildlife friendly area, so it would just be an informal path that run through. But I think on reflection and discussion, we can put sort of a more of a self-binding hog-in type path along that area to make it more usable for, say, like you say, if one person wants to go meet his friend down at the bottom end, that he has another route. But the shared surface streets, and I've lived on 5 different new build developments, the children do cycle along them. So it is an alternative route. So it's giving them the options.
Yeah, okay, I'm not sure of that.
No?
Councillor
Yeah.
Grant.
A couple of things. Had Councillor Huffer been on the bus today, should have noticed the play area in the existing site. Yeah, that's a statement, but I'm looking at the noise mitigation, and there's no noise mitigation. There's a huge suds there on the sort of below the main access road, and I was wondering, you know, and there's a bund and other noise mitigation north of it. I'm just wondering, so no, we'll come back to, yeah, there, I suppose, maybe another one. I'm just wondering whether noise mitigation to the sort of east of that suds would be also useful, because there's no mitigation there at all. And have the suds just above the emergency exit further down towards the west.
Yeah, so obviously there's some other constraints on this side that have come into play. That attenuation basin is in that particular location because engineering wise it needs to sit there. It's where the outfall into that ditch and then into the pipe system down Meeple Road is. So space wise, I can't recall because it was at the outline planning stage when we first looked at the bund, but we did explore the fact, could you put it something to the south of then our access road, and it wasn't deemed to be necessary. And I'm not sure. I think what the plan showing at the moment is the first floor level worst case scenario. And I can't tell you off the top of my head where that comes in, but I know we've explored it because we tried to explore all options that we could do, and it wasn't beneficial when considering all the other site constraints to put an actual bund, or even I think just having an acoustic fence in that location wasn't deemed necessary.
But it does seem to affect quite a number of properties along that suds. I mean, I wasn't thinking about removing the suds or moving it, but just narrowing it, so one could have some kind of acoustic. But maybe that's something to talk with the planning officer afterwards. And Councillor Jones has taken away my thing about cycles.
Sorry, did you want to subway?
No, well, I just wanted overpasses and everything else. Yes.
Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on now. Thank you very much
Thank you.
indeed. Officer, any comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think if I can just come back to Councillor Trapp, I think what's important to note is that that bund is only actually there to protect ground floor. So essentially, even if we put one to the south or extended it, we would only protect the ground floor, but actually they're already protected, all these dwellings by virtue of that single bund. So the only way to really defend noise at first floor would be to raise that bund by probably another 5 meters or so, which obviously would be massive in terms of land take. As you say, there's an opportunity perhaps to put an acoustic fence up, but again, in order to defend noise to those first floor properties, I think we had a similar scheme where it needed to be about 7 or 8 meters high, which obviously when you're looking at countryside and visual impacts, it's probably not a viable solution. So obviously what we consider has been narrowed down here is the minimal amount of properties that are now affected, and then a minimal number of those bedrooms affected still. So I think, in my opinion, I think we've probably done as much as we can, given that constraint exists. And I repeat again, obviously these measurements that we got are worst case scenario. They're taken at peaks, so it may not necessarily be those levels all the time. So it may well be that some of those residents can open their windows and not experience that level of noise that this is predicting.
Well, members, we're going to move on to debate. Unless anybody's got any more questions for the officers, no. Well, in which case, members, it's down to you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Opening the debate, I would just like to place on record, I believe, certainly my thanks to Gavin and everybody who's been involved in this. Looks like there's a huge amount of work gone into it. It's clearly a very desirable scheme. The fact that there are no comments from the parish or the ward councillors on a scheme of this size with this much detail speaks volumes to me, and I'm more than happy to go with the officer's recommendation. I'm more than happy to propose that if you so wish.
I think Councillor Evie was just a hair's breadth ahead.
I was just happy to second that, Chair.
Okay, so we've got any more comments, Councillor? Any more comments? I believe I'm right in saying that Gavin suggested that if we were going to approve this, you wanted a condition put in, I think, about the road surfaces. So would you like to suggest to Caroline some wording to go with that? I'm not upsetting you with this, Councillor Brown. Well, can we work a way of delegating it to the planning manager? You've got the formal words that sort of final discussion, what would you like to describe it as? I've written down road surfaces.
Yeah, so it's essentially just confirming the specific road surface for each road, which we would obviously need to be agreed up probably prior to any works proceeding above ground level. So, and then obviously provided in accordance with.
With discussion with the planning manager and the chair of planning, I would say.
It's entirely up to you. You know, obviously, if you wanted just to delegate us to agree to finalise.
I think it's such a major. The head of planning and I think the chair, and by implication, if the chair wasn't available, the vice chair.
It's either that or we can just agree it today. I've got an extension of time on this application until tomorrow, so we can agree the wording now if you wish.
Well, I think we've got enough wording here, haven't we?
So prior to works proceeding above ground level, specific details of the surfacing for each road serving the development shall be submitted to and agreed in writing by the local planning authority. And I think if I can just clarify the sort of justification for it. So essentially obviously the roads, most of the roads are proposed to be built to adoptable standards, so highways would agree that surfacing in any event. But there are some of those private drives that may or may not be either tarmacked or block paved, permeable block paved, in order to address some of the drainage requirements. So it's really those particular roads, so not a substantial part of the scheme.
Yes, Chairman.
I know, isn't it fun? First of all, thank you very much for a very professional presentation, Gavin. That's very good. I'm just slight. I should have asked this about the applicant, but I can't. But it's to do with the self-built houses. I was exploring self-built houses for myself, and on one estate, one development, I found that the cost of the self-built plot, without any mains or drainage or anything access, was almost, I think it was something like 7/8 of the price of an actual house, which seemed to me excessive. And of course, eventually, no one actually used that self-build, and it went back onto the market. So I think, I don't know whether we can secure any condition about the self-build.
I think that would have been a matter for the outline permission. I'm not too sure how the section 106 determines that. I would assume there'd be a section in the section 106 regarding delivery of self-builds. And I've seen other section 106 agreements whereby there needs to be some demonstration of reasonable marketability of the site over a period of 2 years before it's given over to alternative forms of housing. I'm not too sure whether the 106 in this case does that or not. But that's really a matter for outline. It's not a matter to consider at reserve matters at this stage.
Thank you very much.
Councillor, sorry, Chair. I quite agree with Councillor Trapp. This is a problem we had in Iceland with the self-build plots there, where they are deliberately marketed beyond the reasonable sale or market price, so that they can say they have tried to market them, and they invariably come back and turn into market housing. I don't know whether or not with you in conjunction with the planning manager can look at putting a policy together to make sure that all future self-built houses are marketed at what would consider to be a reasonable price. I believe I had it on good authority from somebody in Bellway Homes that they have and Bloor Homes that they have never sold a self-built property on one of these estates because they are just ridiculously priced.
There are comments that fly around about the pricing, but I feel it would be going down a very tortuous road if this authority was trying to find out whether or not there is a correct price. We might be able to look at them ourselves and say, well, that's too much. But I think if we had officers going around checking on the prices of self-build plots on all the developments that we were doing with, they would just be tied up forever. And I know there've been plots or there's been estates where sort of 4 or 5 houses have been and they've been put on the market. I agree with Councillor Trapp that it has happened, and it seems obvious to an informed observer that something's, but to try and dig out everything that
It can't be, I mean, just because it's difficult, Councillor Hunt, doesn't mean to say it can't be done. Surely, if 2 of the major house builders in the country are both saying that they've never sold a self-built plot on their estates,
I
means
think
that
it's a matter of you and I, because we agree on where we're going on this, that we can have a conversation and we can see if there's a way forward. Councillor Trapp.
I mean, there was, if I remember, about 3 years ago, there was a plot with self-built houses which was trying to become market, and we refused that application. And when I actually asked them about self-built costs, and they never got a reply from them. I was looking into self-build, and they never got a reply from them.
I don't think it's a unique problem you've had.
Well, no, but I'm saying this is an error. That's what.
Councillor Hupper and I will investigate it at a later date and see if we can find some way through the jungle. Councillor Wilson.
Perhaps a way through the jungle would be to say that the market price for them is determined by actually selling one. So until they've actually sold one as self-build, then the prices are wrong. So if they sell one, then the rest of them they can't sell, then that would be fair enough. they've got to sell at least one before they can put any of them on market and have to keep reducing the price till they do sell one.
How wise. Now, members, we're having a pleasant conversation, but I believe it's now time to go to the vote. And so can those in favour of the recommendation to the officer to approve? And that includes with the condition as on there and is agreed by the proposer and the seconder. Yeah, unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. There's no need to go to any more votes. So that has been approved, and thank you very much, Gavin. That was a very good presentation. And then we move on to the final item. It's item number 8. Yes, if you'd like to go, then you're going to miss some very exciting statistics. Okay, item number 8.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing us to sort out that last condition, because we need to make that decision by tomorrow. So if we'd had to spend time consulting others, we may have missed a deadline on the major application that you've just approved. Last week, I just sort of explained how there's a lot of work behind the statistics and thank the staff and things. I thought this week I'd give you a little bit of context as to what some of these numbers mean. And first of all, I'm just going to point out that the government requirements are that if you look at the top table where it says majors, 8 majors, 100% determined within time, and the target is 90% within 13 weeks. For the government returns, what you have to achieve over a 2-year rolling average is 60%. If you don't achieve 60%, you could be in danger of losing planning powers because you'll be on the list of poor performing authorities. So you can see that you're consistently above that target. And in fact, you're 100%, you couldn't be even better, you couldn't be any better. And then if you combine all of the remaining categories, all others, so minors, householders and others, the government target is 70% over a rolling 2-year average. And if you don't achieve that, you could be looking at special measures. And I can tell you that East Cambs District Council is well above any special measures intervention, and there's never fallen into that category. So those targets are targets set by the council. They're not government targets. So that's just to give you a bit of context of what that means. Having said all of that, we are looking at improving the arrangements for getting extensions of time agreed, because sometimes it's a bit rushed. And for example, Gavin's got one where today we need to make that decision tomorrow to achieve targets. So we might try and be a bit more generous and give ourselves a bit more wriggle room so that we can be even better than that. So that's just a bit of context around what those figures mean. And just to remember that 60% for majors and 70% for minors. And if you ever see anything less than that, then we could be into a bit of trouble, but I can't anticipate that ever happening. And then looking at staff numbers, if you look at the number of current applications, there's a little bit at the bottom there that tells you who the teams are. And myself and Catherine Looper interviewed some candidates a couple of weeks ago, and I can say we've now appointed 2 permanent members of staff who are going to be starting in January. We've got a new planning officer starting in January and another one starting in March, a senior planner starting in March and a planning officer starting in January. And they both got good levels of experience. In particular, the senior planner's got about 20 odd years experience. So we have 2 new permanent members of staff, and they're going to join teams 2 and team 4, because you can see team 2 has only got 2 full-time equivalents and team 4 has only got 1.8 full-time equivalents. So by March next year, we'll have 2 new permanent members of staff, which will reduce our vacancy levels down to 2 in the planning officer team. And we're going to keep on 2 contract planners. And as long as Gavin's happy to hang around, he can be one of those. and then we'll freeze on recruitment for now and see where we are in the summertime. So we've got 2 new permanent planners starting early next year, and the planning support team is fully staffed as well. And they've had 1 new member start and they've got another one starting fairly soon. And then you can just see, like last week, that the number of applications is down slightly, but only, still at a high level. You can see there's still 153 applications registered in 1 month, and you can see caseloads are still quite high. So we still do need, there's no real sign of any major downturn, unlike say in 2008 when the floor fell out of the property market and things really went downhill. If interest rates recover, I see no reason why you wouldn't see house builders continue, particularly in this location, because you can see all the kind of applications we're dealing with. There's still a lot of those big ones in the pipeline, like I said last week. So there's still definitely a need to keep our planners happy and to keep looking and getting some people in the door. That's it, Chair. Thank you.
I wish you a happy Christmas, Chair. But obviously, can I just check? Does that, so when you looked at the major ones and you got 100% within 90% within 13 weeks, does that mean 10% have extension times on it?
I think that means that's generic for within time, either within 13 weeks or within an extended period. The target is 13 weeks or within an extended period. So if you agree an extension with the applicant, like for example, Gavin's application took a lot longer than 13 weeks, but it will be as a success because the applicant agreed to extend the deadline. So nearly all of the majors take more than 13 weeks, as you will always know, because a lot of the applications you see in front of you are from sort of 2 or 3 years ago sometimes. For example, the one last week that you looked at, that Anne dealt with was a couple of years old, I think. So it's just generic for anything agreed within target or within an extended target.
Sorry, what sort of proportion are?
For majors, most of them will be, because they're so complicated. Look at all the consultees you've got: Lead Local Flood Authority, Highway Authority. It's very rare that you get a clean response within 13 weeks, and all the we seek amendments and things like that. So for majors, it's quite significant, but for the minors and the householders, a lot of them will be determined within 8 weeks.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Merry Christmas. Just on enforcement and notices served, I'm guessing the notices served saying 2 is a typo and it should be 1. Otherwise, we're missing the details of the other enforcement notice.
I don't know that for certain, but I'll check for you.
Thank you.
I'd like to say happy Christmas to all members and officers and close this meeting, and thank you very much for attending.